Welcome to this small tutorial on how to work an Afterthought heel. And these socks that I have right here, I started from the top, knitted down. I did the ribbing first and then I knitted like around 60 or 65 rounds before I put on markers from here. You can do any length at all depending on the pattern you're following or how long you want your socks. But I put these 3 light bulb stitch markers to mark the first, the middle and the last stitch on row 1. So the first stitch marker is placed on the very first stitch. So I do this magic loop, so I have half the stitches on one needle and the other halves of the stitches on the back of the loop. So I place my heel either one. On this I put them on the first row, so this is a very good way so you know exactly where to pick up your stitches for the heel. So when you are here and ready to pick up for your stitches, you take your needle it's just the same as knitting your toe, but you pick up your stitches. And what I have started to do here is that I pick up the row above the stitch marker. So I have 3 stitch markers in the row that I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut this row. So I'm going to pick up the stitches on the row just above where I have the stitch markers. So I take my needle and I pick up the right leg of that stitch, the right leg on this stitch, and the right leg on the next stitch. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit for you guys so you can see better. So I go through this right leg.
Det gør jeg.
And I do that
hele vejen hen, og jeg er lidt
all the
koncentreret,
way.
fordi at selvom jeg har markeret den første, så kan det godt gå
Make
galt.
sure
Så
that you
nogle gange kan det være
don't
nemt
pick
at
up
holde øje med den
stitches
her
above or
maske
below. Just
nedenunder.
pay attention and go the
Og sikre
entire
mig, at
row.
jeg tager den helt rigtige række. Jeg vil skynde mig at sige, at det her det er ikke en metode, jeg har opfundet.
I didn't invent this method. This was other people have done this before me. Kirby Werby, and I know the Crazy Sock Lady has done the same, so it's not my invention.
Når først kommer i gang, så glider det faktisk ret.
Once you get started on this, it's kind of easy. You know, one stitch just kind of takes the other one. Once you get the hang of the
Så kommer hen for enden, så er det ret spændende, om jeg har ramt den.
And then when you get to the end of the row, you can tell if you're doing it right. You should be hitting the stitch just above the one that is marked with the stitch marker.
Så nu har jeg
so that was good. It worked out.
Samlet.
I have picked up all the stitches. Oops, just lost those. Just gonna pick those up real quick, like that.
Nu har jeg altså samlet.
So now I have picked up the row above my stitch markers.
Så trækker jeg lige pinden.
And I'm just gonna pull my needle a little bit, and then
og så prøver jeg den.
I'm gonna take the other needle, and I'm gonna do the
same thing.
tilbage
her, hvor jeg startede.
Have to go back to where I started and lift up the stitch marker a little bit, and then you can pick up the stitches.
Det er den her, den skal ikke tage,
and the row below.
Zoomer lige lidt ind igen, så kan jeg.
Just gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see.
Denne her.
So this one is not the one to take. You have to take the one below the stitch marker, and do the same thing all the way across.
Samle højre ben op.
The right leg of the stitch all the way.
Jeg beklager, måske hvis lysforholdet ikke er helt perfekt. Jeg skal have købt mig nogle ordentlige lamper.
Just take your time and pick up. Make sure to pick up
hvis jeg sætter
the right stitch.
En almindelig standardlampe på her til at lyse på, så begynder det at billedet at blinke lidt. Så jeg ved godt, det ikke er helt optimalt, men det er det bedste, jeg har at gøre med lige nu. Okay, så jeg nærmer mig midten.
So now we're in the
Så
middle.
det er godt at dobbelttjekke igen, at denne her markør
You can just double
markerer
check
den
that
række
are still working the
der, hvor jeg
row
samler
below
op.
the stitch marker. So just
passer
keep on
fint.
picking up that right leg right underneath the row.
Jeg skal lige holde tungen lige i munden. Det er virkelig træls at komme til at klippe den forkerte snor. Så det er derfor, at man lige er lidt vågen.
You have to pay attention
Det er
here
lidt
because you
nemmere nu,
really
når man
don't
kan
want to
se
be cutting the
den
wrong
stribe her ovenover.
row of the yarn when you're done. So, but you can tell when you get to the end of the row if you have picked up the right row all the way across. And we're looking good so far. So now we're at the end. I'm picking up that last stitch.
Sådan. Så har jeg samlet.
Now we've picked up all the stitches.
Maskerne op i rækken over og
So
rækken
you pick
under.
up the stitches in the row
min
above
maskemarkør,
your stitch
ja.
markers and the row below your
Så nu
stitch
skal jeg
markers.
lige
So
klippe her.
now I have to cut the yarn. So you just kind of pull on the middle stitch marker a little bit, because then you are sure that you cut in the right place. So you just pull out that stitch marker a little bit and cut it. Oops. Yeah. And cut. Now you can use like a tapestry needle or your knitting needle, whatever you think is the most comfortable for you. I just use my sock needle. And then you just pick up all the stitches like this, one at a time. So if you knit your socks toe up or cuff down, it's the same thing. But just make sure that you pick up stitches from the right place. So if you knit them from the toe, you have to turn them the other way around. So that's the only difference. So when you knit them cuff down, you pick up stitches with the cuff facing you. And if you do them toe up, you pick up stitches with the toe facing you. And to make sure you don't have a little gap in the sides of the sock, you don't pick up all the stitches. You just leave the two last stitches. You just leave those on there, because then when you knit with your contrasting color heel, it's just miraculously there will be no hole. That is just so smart. I really like to do the Afterthought heel because you can do the heel when you have the time. So when you do like a normal cuff down sock with a heel flap, you have to make sure that if you're sitting somewhere, yeah, you have time. So here I have only 2 stitches left, and I'm just going to leave them in. Turn your work and pick up the yarn on the other side of your sock. So it's so different what people like the most, if they want an Afterthought heel or some people prefer the heel flap. For me, it's the same. I like either way. I know that some people wants to just knit a few rounds before decreasing on the heel. So you just have to try and see what works the best for you. I knit a few rounds before my decreasing. I think here I do like 5 rounds. Yeah, so now I have 2 stitches left. I think my stitch marker is a little off, maybe. I'm just gonna take it out so I can see better. Okay. Okay, I have 2 over there, so I guess I can pick this one up as well. Yeah. It's because it's upside down. It looks a little different. So then I'm just gonna take my ends and tuck them down my sock. I'm just gonna push my needle back into place as if, just like if you were at the end of the sock and getting ready to do your toe. So I'm just gonna pick up my contrasting color. I'm just gonna take my yarn and start knitting. And then you just knit this entire row, just like you would normally do. And I did speed up the process here a little bit so that you are not gonna fall asleep. Now I'm at the end of the row. I'm just gonna turn my work and knit the other side the exact same way. Just pull in your needle and pull out the back needle. The ends, just tuck in the ends into the sock, and then we will worry about that later. And I just knit that other side just the same way. Now I did 1 round with the contrasting color on my heel. So now you have different options. If you know that you need extra room for your heel, you can knit a few more rounds before doing your decreases. I'm just going to do a couple of rounds more before I do my decreases. Okay, so I just now did my 5 rounds extra for me before decreasing. Now I'm just going to start doing my decreasing just like on a toe. It's just, now you actually just knit a toe. So I just knit 1. It's a good idea to mark the front of the sock so that you know when you have actually knit 1 round. So this stitch marker is just to make sure where my round is. Just to make sure I don't lose track of where I am. So I take 1 stitch off loosely, knit 1, and then pull the stitch over. I do that instead of slip, slip, knit. I like this better. I think it looks better. It tightens the stitches a little bit more, I think, than when you just slip 2 stitches and knit them. At the end, I just knit 2 together. Like that. Then I turn my work. I knit 1. I slip 1. I knit 1, and then I pull the slip stitch over. Then I knit to the end of the row again until I have 3 stitches left, and I knit these 2 together. just like that. So now I did one round with decreasing. I'm just going to keep on doing my increases on every other row until I have 12 stitches left on each side, and then I'm going to sew them together with Kitchener stitch. Okay, so now I did one round with decreasing, and now I'm just going to knit one row without decreasing. So I'm going to do that until I have 12 on the front and 12 stitches on the back, and then I'm going to sew them together. So now we have 12 stitches on each needle, and now we're gonna sew these two sides together using Kitchener stitch. I'm gonna do the easiest way that I have learned how to do this, and in this way you will avoid like these little pointy ears that you'll have on each side of the sock. So I have my thread on the back needle, and I've put my end of the yarn on a tapestry needle. So the way I remember this is that the needle closest to me I knit, and the back needle is further away and a little bit more difficult, so that is purling. So knit is close to me and purl is away from me. So you just take the first stitch off as if to knit, and then in the same movement I just go into the the next stitch as if to purl. So knit, purl, and this stitch you leave on the needle. So now you go to the stitch on the back as if to purl, and you slip that stitch off, and in the same movement you go through the other stitch as if to knit, and then you pull your yarn and you tighten this a little bit. So now you're back on the first needle. You always have to go through 2 stitches every time. So you have to go through the first stitch and the next stitch on the front. So you go through this stitch as if to knit, and you take it off, and you go through the next stitch as if to purl, and you leave it on. So knit, take it off, purl, leave it on. And on the back, purl, take it off, knit, leave it on. Now you're back on the front, so knit, take it off, purl wise, leave it on. And make sure to tighten your work as if to purl and as if to knit, like that. And you pull your yarn back to the front needle as if to knit, take it off, as if to purl, leave it. And then on the back, as if to purl, take it off, as if to knit, leave it on the needle. You can turn this into a little song. Knit and purl, leave it on. Purl and knit, leave it on. Knit wise, take it off. Purl wise, leave it on. Knit, purl, pull, purl, knit, leave it on. So you always take off the first stitch and leave the next stitch. Take off the first stitch, leave the next stitch. Now you only have like 2 stitches left on each needle, so you have to make sure you don't lose the stitches, because now the needles will kind of pull down a little bit. So and now I only have 2 stitches left, one on the front and one on the back. So once I pull this, whoop, I just take off my needles, and I do that to avoid that little dog ear. So now I just have to sew this. I have to sew this in, weave in this end. I'm just gonna pull this a little bit to make sure it looks like the other stitches. And I just find any place that I think will look as if it goes in that direction. So I'm just gonna put it in there. Tighten it up a little bit. And now it's here. I have this in the right direction. I'm just gonna put my needle to follow. I'm just gonna put my needle down so it looks like the yarn kind of goes on top of that yarn right down there. So I take, oh, now I dropped the needle. Yeah, again, I'm just gonna pull it in the direction that I want. And I want that yarn to be kind of tucked in. So I'm just gonna, I want the yarn to lay on top of that other stitch. I'm just gonna pull that in through the inside of the sock. And now it looks like this. And I'm just gonna turn this inside out so you can see all the ends. Here's the thread from when we were picking up the stitches for our heel. And now you just weave in the ends of your sock, and then you're done. You can see here there's no hole when you have combined the contrasting yarn in your heel. There is no hole there. I'm just gonna, I usually leave in my stitch markers until I have completed sock number 2, so that I know exactly how many rounds did I do on the leg and how many rounds did I do on the foot. Because even though I always know that I'm going to remember, I don't remember when I'm actually there. So it's always a good idea to leave in stitch markers so that you know when you're knitting sock number 2, and you know that you get the same length. And also I just want to say that if you knit like 5 extra rounds on your heel, that's going to add to the length of your foot. So keep that in mind when you knit your foot, that if you know you're going to do 5 extra rounds for your heel, you need to make sure to knit those 5 rounds less on your foot. So now it's done, and I'm just going to weave in all the ends, and then they are all done. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to this little knitting school tutorial school I made here on YouTube. I will be adding more tutorials in the future. Thank you for watching. I just want to end this tutorial with showing you how the sock looks on the sock blogger. Here you go. Thanks for watching.